You automatically look for silence to gather your thoughts. On an aircraft carrier, there is no silence. Silence is punished by mistakes. The pause in which, ashore, you would take off your headphones for a second looks here like a failure of discipline. Sound is not background. It is a constant task. Jet blasts do not turn to see whether you have finished your thought. An arresting wire does not ask follow-up questions. A propeller does not care whether this is a convenient moment for you. You are taught to move not by habit but by procedure. You grab your hearing protection the way you grab fall protection. You put it on the way you buckle a harness at height, and you stop checking whether it feels comfortable, because comfort is a luxury and the rule is life. Why do ordinary habits suddenly become threats? Because you have effectively moved inside a machine that will do its job regardless of your reflexes. And if you do not rewrite those reflexes, they will work against you. The ship greets you not with a heroic shot, but with a smell, fuel, oil, dry ventilated air, salt, paint, a faint metallic tang from heated surfaces and cables. The passageway seems long and narrow, but that is only the beginning. The maze is built so that you cannot run, only move with intent. Every turn is labeled, every door has a logical role, and you very quickly understand that improvising in space is as dangerous here as improvising in a procedure. You are a student whose exam schedule is set for the entire deployment: when to sleep, when to eat, when to put on gloves, when to be quiet, when to speak, when to run, and when to stand still and wait. You are a rookie in the air wing, and your job is not to help in general, but to do specifics: bring, secure, signal, fasten, inspect, clear, receive, and send off aircraft that live by their own hard tables. You sleep in a berthing compartment where someone is always falling asleep and someone has just woken up. You climb ladders with tools so often that you stop noticing how your feet automatically choose the right step on the grating. You learn to listen through noise, to see through glare and wind, to speak with your hands when your mouth is pointless. Your personal trajectory is a small arrow on a huge diagram, and if the arrow points the wrong way, the diagram will not stop. It will simply start to break. The galley feeds in flows, not one person at a time. You have a window you pass through, miss it, and you wait for the next wave. The line stretches like a taxi line before takeoff, and suddenly you understand why that comparison feels natural here. You do not choose what I want, you choose what is scheduled. You take a tray, your hand goes to sanitizer almost automatically, then you move forward, catching fragments of conversation about hydraulic pressure, tool log notations, who goes topside first today and who stays below. The food is not about fireworks of taste. It is about steady calories that will carry you from one watch to the next. Hot is good enough. A chance to sit is a luxury. A chance to eat in silence is fantasy. Water is simple and strict at once. It exists, but it is not infinite, like everything on the ship. A shower is not a spa with steam and music. It is a function. You quickly learn to step in, wash, step out. You quickly learn not to leave a tap running just because, not to leave traces of your comfort for the next person. Every extra minute is someone else's lost minute. Every "I will just go back for seconds" risks being late to muster, to a briefing, to a job where you have already been placed in the chain. Coffee saves alertness only, insofar as it does not keep you from listening to your own hands. It does not replace sleep and certainly does not replace attention. Salt in the air dries your lips. Ventilation dries your throat. You drink not when you want, but when you can. A simple bottle of water becomes an item to be scheduled just as precisely as who holds the paddles aft today, who is assigned to the arresting gear crew, and who is standing by for fuel. You gulped on the run. You did not warm up. You did not rest. You only ticked the box, did not pass out. That is not a complaint. It is a description of mechanics. Eating is part of a node, and nodes in a system must operate on time. Whether you make it or not affects not only your mood, but how neatly the next puzzle piece clicks in. Tool, float coat, gloves, headset, meeting point, a glance at the airplan board, a glance at the person who owns this slice of deck, a quick exchange of hand signals, and onward. You think a bed is salvation, but here, a bed is a rack. 3 tiers, just enough headroom to turn your head if you do not move too sharply. The locker under the mattress holds less than a gym bag ashore, and that becomes the lesson. Order is not optional. Order is an algorithm of readiness. Your things are labeled not for aesthetics, but so that, in a drill, your hand finds them instantly, not somewhere around there. A charging cable you would ignore ashore is not supposed to exist here at all. Personal cords are a fire risk. Any do-it-yourself electrical fix is a red zone. Ventilation runs always. Sometimes it cools, sometimes it dries you to a rasp. In the darkness of berthing, you know where your earplugs are, where the headlamp with a red filter is, where your boots sit with their toes outward so you can get into them without light. The shower is again in sequence, and everyone has a timer without a dial, just the sense of when to step out so you do not make the next person late. Here you quickly understand that coziness is not candles and pillows. It is the ability to lie down and stop tensing your muscles for at least 10 minutes without hearing, "Up you get." Watches cut the 24 hours into uneven lengths, the way a storm cuts a wave. Pre-dawn wake-ups become so confident and habitual that it feels like you have lived by a bell all your life. You go up the ladder with a tool bag and already know how to place your feet so nothing snags, how to turn your body so you do not bang your elbow on a stanchion and drop a wrench. A tool in your hand is a matter of accounting too. You take 11. You will return 11. Every item has a number. A loss is not no big deal, but a reason for everyone to start searching. You tether a pencil, not because it is windy, but because anything that can become a foreign object on deck will become one someday. A stray bolt in an intake will not become a funny story. It will become a story from an after-action report. Drills do not get in the way of life. They write life. They arrive unexpectedly because otherwise the real one will be unexpected. A simple signal, and you are no longer washing your face. You are turning, picking up, fastening, running, thinking not in words but in sequences. Words on the deck are often superfluous. Hands speak here. You show strictly learned signals, not whatever is convenient, because whatever is convenient differs from person to person, and the correct way is one. Sequence is in everything. Remove, secure, signal, receive acknowledgement, repeat the acknowledgement, execute. If you get it wrong, it is not just you who ends up in a puddle. The team sits in it. The chain stops. If you do not remember, you ask before you approach an aircraft, not in the process. This is not strictness for strictness' sake. It is protection from blunt, smearing fatigue, from that state when you hear everything but understand nothing until someone grabs your sleeve. Seasickness does not ask whether you are a veteran or a rookie. Some people get green on day 1. Some never feel it. Some suffer for 3 days and then wake up one morning and it is gone as if the sky had been switched off. A pill helps, but it dries you out and makes your eyes heavy. Drowsiness is the enemy here. You cannot sleep on the flight deck, and below you cannot sink so deep that you do not hear the alarm. So many people endure, hold the handrail, and count breaths while the body resets. Your ears live under pressure from noise. Without protection, you are paying for future muffled rooms and a permanent ringing that will make it hard to talk to your kids. The foam plugs sit tight. The headset cups seal over them. The strap across the back of your head is not for show, but so the wind does not rip it off. No, just for a second. Seconds do not exist on the flight deck. Fuel vapors and exhaust irritate your throat. You learn this truth not under a turning engine, but later below deck, where your body finally notices that you have been breathing too many sky-filtered breaths. Your skin dries from wind and salt. Your lips crack if you forget to cover them at the right time. You wash your hands until they squeak, not out of hygienic pride, but because dirt is a non-standard additive in a system that demands cleanliness. Medical runs like a well-tuned plan, quick, precise, without extra words. No one dramatizes, but the distance to shore is time. Evacuation is not now, it is when it can be done. Safety rules first feel excessive and then become the only way to be calm. The deck markings are not decorative. Every line carries meaning. Half a step separates fine from dangerous. Jet blast is not a flow of heat. It is a force that can carry you to somewhere you must not go. An arresting cable is not a rope. It is an object with energy you cannot oppose. Here you do not invent your own ergonomics. You repeat what you learned, because those ergonomics have already been paid for by other people's mistakes. Alcohol is prohibited categorically, and after one night cycle, you stop asking why. A clear head is a resource you cannot buy with an extra cup of coffee. An order is not an invitation to discuss. It is a way to align many links at a single time so the system does not fall apart. Arguments happen afterward, in a room for review. Corrections are introduced afterward too. On deck, argument ends at the moment the flag goes up and the jets roll. Repetition in training irritates at first and then soothes. You did this yesterday, the day before, and the day before that, and you will do it tomorrow. At some point you realize that without repetition, nothing works, because repetition is what replaces impulsiveness with predictability. Sometimes repetition is the way to fight fatigue. When your brain lags, habit pulls you forward. Who owns which slice of deck for signals? Where the purples live with fuel, where the yellows conduct movement, where the blues haul chocks and chains, where the greens tend to the mechanisms. Which of the browns is your plane captain, who in white watches everything and records? You learn not from a primer, but with your eyes and feet until you start seeing those colors in your peripheral vision like road signs. Weather here is not a backdrop. The wind hits, and if your chin strap is not tight, you will learn that not by sound, but by the tug on your helmet. Rain, fog, fine salt in the air mix with droplets of fuel and oil, and all of it together behaves like a very fine sandpaper, polishing skin and scratching goggle lenses. The sun works on a gray day no worse than on a clear one. Reflection off the water is a second sun. Gloves, goggles, cranial, float coat, these are not a uniform and not a check the box. They are answers to the environment. Inside the hull are the roar of machinery and vibration. Outside are the jolts of landings when the arresting gear catches an aircraft. The toes of your boots always remember that beneath them is not a parking lot, but a rough, abrasive surface meant to bite into a sole. Smooth would be fatal here. You quickly learn to feel with your foot what the spot in front of you is: water, condensation, hydraulic fluid, fuel, and how it behaves under a boot. A gust of wind of several meters per second ashore is a mild annoyance. Here it is, a reason to find yourself suddenly where you did not plan to be. You lower your center of gravity instinctively when the wind comes off the island. You tuck free straps. You remove anything that could whip and snag. You look out not only for yourself. Someone else's flapping lanyard is your problem too, because in a second it could be no one's. The deck's ergonomics hit your knees first, your back next, your neck after an hour of looking up trying to read an aircraft number through vapor and glare. Rotation of tasks is not for variety, but for freshness of attention. Here it is better to swap for 5 minutes than to perform one critical gesture on autopilot in the wrong place. On a normal day, you would have the reflex to reach for your phone between tasks. Here that gesture is pointless. Access to communications is rationed. Screens in pockets are not part of flight deck life. Berthing is communal. passageways are communal, and quiet is communal, and it is scheduled. Personal boundaries are few, lulls are almost non-existent. Hierarchy is visible not only in rank insignia, but in who stood where at the last muster. Relationship rules are strict, to exclude favoritism, unspoken cliques, and everything that corrodes order from within. "I will just step away" does not work. You have an assignment, and the assignment matters more than your mood. If a short call home is permitted, it will be when it is possible, not when you feel like it. You learn to speak briefly and to the point with loved ones, to live with delay in messages and letters, and not to confuse that delay with indifference. Humor becomes a tool that oils the gears. It shows up on the ladder when two people carry a crate and try not to clip an elbow on a corner in a line where everyone shares the same weight. Between evolutions, when the ship's loudspeaker cuts out for a second, and suddenly you can hear someone breathing next to you. Fatigue is shared, food is shared, good job is shared, and so is correction. So the culture is shared as well. You do not pretend not to see someone shaving a corner off a rule. You speak up in a way that is not an insult, but a reminder that on the deck we are each other's safety net. Sometimes it seems that you are calmer after all the briefings. That is true, but calm leads not to comfort, it leads to clarity. Outside are still wind and spray. Inside is still the hum. You sit in a short pre-launch briefing and listen to the plan where every line is not informational noise, but a forecast of your own day. Someone is assigned to fuel, someone to chocks and chains, someone to escorts, someone to the far corner watch, someone to the bridge link, someone to the crash and salvage team with foam lines. Each role has its own set of movements, and you see those movements before they are spoken. Your internal deck is already alive. Then the cycle starts again, and you remember why people ashore undervalue predictability. Ashore, quiet is the default. Water comes out of the tap because that is how it is. You can say, "not now," without wrecking anyone's schedule. You can retreat into solitude and not put anyone at risk. Here it is the opposite. Silence is not normal. Silence is an event. Water exists, always, but it no more belongs to you personally than a fire extinguisher or a deck wrench. "Not now" is acceptable only where you are not part of a chain, and no one here lives outside a chain. Solitude is a rare luxury, and you realize its value precisely when you lie in a rack, hearing someone else breathe, when you wake not from sleep but from a gentle shudder through the hull, when you get up not because you have slept enough, but because the call sounded. In this logic, the world does not become worse. It becomes a different scale, where your measure of freedom is your measure of trustworthiness, and trust is a series of confirmed actions. By the second week, you almost stop tripping over your own misconceptions. You know that the habit of taking off your headset to hear someone better becomes a threat here, that the habit of lingering in the shower for a minute becomes the irritated look of the person who will be late after you, that the habit of discussing every detail breaks the chain because questions must be asked before and during you must execute. You know that rules do not get in the way of life. They give you the freedom to act without looking over your shoulder at someone else's improvisation. You understand that the finality of an order is not harshness for harshness' sake. It is a safety line for when the wind and noise have erased words, and you need to trust that the other person did theirs as required. Sometimes you stand by the rail on a night between cycles and look at the black water. The wind seems to blow everything out of your head that is not connected to now, and suddenly you realize that you are truly calm, not because it is easy, but because it is clear. Shore habits are indeed dangerous in these conditions. They were born in a world with many cushionings. Here cushions are few, and people standing next to you make up for their absence. Simple discoveries follow, which seem banal ashore, and here feel like revelations. For example, That predictability is one of the greatest human luxuries, and that predictability ashore rests on large free margins of time and space that a ship does not have. Or that silence is functional, and when there is little of it, you suddenly learn the price of every whisper. Or that water is not background but a resource, and you cannot treat it like air here, even though it is air you actually have to manage. By the end of the day, you reach a state of strange clarity. You know that fatigue does not sound like a yawn. It sounds like that dull attentiveness when you do everything right, but the world is slightly blurred. That is the most dangerous state. The system is built to distrust a single person and to trust procedure instead. You are grateful that everything around you is doubled. A gesture by a repeat, a step by a mark, an inspection by a signature, a conclusion by a brief. You are grateful that over your personal effort there are other eyes, other experience, other practiced movements, and that all of it adds up to resilience. Because this ship, a city, an airfield, and a factory in one, was not built to make you feel important, but to launch aircraft when needed and bring them back where they are expected. From that angle, it is easiest to see the 3 reasons why even one day on a carrier is almost unbearable for an unprepared person. First, the total regulation of time. The day is scheduled by signals, not by desires. Lose a minute, lose a link that someone else's safety and launch depend on. The point is not that you are forbidden to rest. The point is that rest must be placed where it does not break the machine. With the morning wake-up, you sign a contract. You will be where you are needed, not where you want. And you will be there not because you are punished, but because that is what makes other people's work possible. Second, the hostile sensory environment. Noise, vibration, wind, and smells are not background. They are forces. Here sound presses literally, light ricochets off metal and water, air shoves. Any fatigue immediately becomes extra risk because your receptors are overloaded and protecting you is constant work. Third, a confined space with zero margin for error. You live inside a machine where one misstep multiplies instantly across a group and a mission. There is no, "I will handle it alone." There is either, "We did it right," or "We did it wrong," and are learning not to repeat it. Ashore, we undervalue the predictability of civilian life. It seems natural that you can find a corner of quiet, turn off notifications, pour water, say, "Not now," and not let anyone down by it. It seems natural that you have personal space where your mess is only yours. It seems natural that rules are a frame, and creativity is a way to stretch the frame. But because all of this seems natural, we do not see how much effort the world around us makes to sustain those freedoms. On a ship, that invisible work becomes as visible as the air that never stops humming. And from that comes a nearly paradoxical gratitude, not romantic, but very simple, for a predictable tap, for a window you can open and close when you like, for headphones you can take off without anything bad happening. The first time you return to shore, you suddenly catch emptiness in your ears. The silence sounds wrong. You do not trust a room where nothing hums. You step into a shower and feel guilty about a long stream of hot water. You walk down a street and catch yourself scanning the ground for markings, checking the asphalt for foreign objects, tightening a dangling strap on a stranger's backpack. You check a door twice, count tools out loud, write even small tasks on a list, because your brain is used to confirming. These are not compulsions. They are the trace of an operational logic where things were right, not because you were talented, but because you were predictable inside common rules. If you go back to sea, the gestures will return faster than the words. You will speak with a lit glance through a visor again. You will feel the wind not with your skin, but with the ribbon on your helmet. You will know where your earplugs are even before you wake up. If you do not, the memory will remain anyway. A folded pair of earplugs in your pocket for a concert will remain. The habit of drinking water by plan will remain. The caution toward household improvements in wiring will remain. The respect for people who repeat checks without tiring will remain. And the understanding will remain that most obvious comforts ashore are complex engineering and social solutions that work because they are surrounded by time and space reserves. On a carrier, those reserves are minimal. That is why people live differently there. Oddly, it is exactly that different that strengthens your sense of usefulness. When you stop arguing with the boundaries of shore habits, skills appear in their place. Skills that do not look flashy, yet keep reality running. You rigged correctly, ran a line, checked a mark, stepped back at the right time, showed the pilot exactly the signal they expected, and the world kept working. In the history of the ship, your name is a line in a list. In the history of that pilot's life, it may be an invisible but important variable because their aircraft did not get into trouble thanks to your missing bolt. That is the right proportion. You matter not as a hero, but as a piece of a precise system. There lies the answer to the opening question, why shore habits turn into threats. Because they were born in an environment with large margins, and here there are none. Here, instead of what is convenient for me, the question is, what is safest and most reliable for everyone? It sounds harsh, but from that harshness comes the freedom to work calmly, free from other people's whims, from accidents, from the lottery of improvisations. And when you catch yourself one day that you do not want to take your headset off just for a moment of quiet, when you catch yourself that a shower is for purpose, not for pleasure, when you catch yourself that you did 3 small things in advance so someone next to you would be safer, then this ship has rewritten your reflexes. That does not make you better than others. It simply makes you suitable for a place with no silence and no margin for error. And even if you then live again in a world where you can say, later, where water runs without a schedule, where you can hang a string of lights over your bed without permission, the knowledge of the other world will remain. It is like a quiet second track in your headphones, the sense that any comfort is someone's deliberate work, and any spontaneity is a credit someone will pay. You stop resenting rules where they save more than they limit. You learn to see the difference between strictness for order's sake and strictness for safety's sake. And if you find yourself back on the flight deck, you will understand why people here do not expect silence. Silence arrives only when everyone has done everything right, and it lasts exactly until the next signal.